All right, this week on Not Another Movie podcast, we talk about the Ben Affleck departure from the DCU director's chair.
We talk about Dune coming back to the big screen, possibly.
And James Cameron finally busts the myth that's been bugging us for 20 years from the ending of Titanic. Hello and welcome to the first and inaugural episode of Not Another Movie podcast, a podcast in a massive sea of podcasts that we're hoping that you may listen to eventually.
We thought that, we just needed to add one more voice to the cacophony of people talking about stuff on the internet, notably films. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of film podcasts.
Yeah, well, we originally started a podcast called The Sean Show, which was originally supposed to be about myself, Sean Pierce, and you, Sean Kelly.
And then we realized we're not that exciting.
Yeah, well, we spoke for 5 minutes and we're like, oh, you know what? We saw this movie. So then it just spawned into a movie podcast. So now rather than people ask what the hell is The Sean Show, now it's called Not Another Movie Podcast, and it pretty much is self-explanatory.
Exactly right. It's very clear. So just specifically though, what do we do on this podcast?
We just talk movies, talk shit about movies.
Latest news.
I think the title is self-explanatory. Movie reviews, movie news. We might do a little bit of trivia, might do a little bit of bests of, what we think is hot, what we think is not. And
Jennifer Connelly.
You've always
different kind of hot. I'm sorry. Different kind. Moving on.
Well, Sean and I first met when we were both ushers at a cinema, I would dare say nearly 20 years ago. And that's where our love of film grew and our conversation started. And we rekindled over Facebook and thought, let's see if anyone would actually listen to us talk about a film.
That was so romantic the way that you put that. That was just like, I would watch that movie.
I think my wife's actually jealous right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the most romantic thing I've ever said.
Yeah, your story with her is not nearly as engaging as what we just went through then. That was nice.
No, well, I remember the days we used to stand on the podium when we used to talk movies and we had these crazy ideas for films. Some of
the
which
trolley movie still would have worked.
I actually thought you were high on drugs that day. You told me about this fascinating trolley film, which I reckon you should just give a quick rundown now of.
All right. Check this, okay? Now, this was before Sharknado. This was before any of those kind of so bad they're good movies. I was ahead of my time. All right. So a film about killer trolleys that are murdering people, and they're doing it because they are being mistreated by people. People are taking them for granted, taking them away from the shopping center, leaving them in ditches in like rivers and stuff like that. And at the end of the movie, after they've killed a whole bunch of people, slasher style, all the trolleys on the earth vanish. And it turns out there was some kind of like alien species who were here to help us, but then we didn't take care of them, so they left. So then everybody the world over had to start carrying their groceries because we didn't look after the trolleys. That is, there's the schlock element, but it's also a good message there. Right?
Well, that silence that you just heard was the same silence he heard 20 years ago.
I thought it sounded familiar.
In my best Dr. Evil impression, right.
When James Cameron comes out with Killer Trolleys next year, he can send me a friggin' check because that could have made at least tens of dollars.
I think that was one of the reasons why we didn't speak for another 20 years.
You're like, oh yeah, fuck that guy, and you just hang
and that was until you Facebook stalked me. So
yeah, exactly right.
You remember that script idea?
I was still pitching it. This whole friendship now is just about me still pitching that idea to get you on board.
Yeah, he's slowly adding bits and pieces into the podcast till eventually, I'll be like, what, that actually is a good idea.
What do they call? I'm gonna neg you, or I don't know what they do these days.
Well, funny enough, after you've just explained it like that, maybe you were a bit ahead of your time, because thinking about last year's best film Arrival, it's kind of got that same premise. We didn't really take
Yes.
we took those aliens for granted, and they fucked off in the end.
There you go. Dennis Villeneuve, call me. We can make magic happen.
I reckon you should just call your lawyers.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
I reckon they pretty much
if
ripped
only
you
that
off.
movie had a trolley in it. Yeah, it's basically the same except replace giant tentacle aliens with supermarket trolleys. Basically the same thing.
Now, are these the trolleys that you got to put the coins in, or were these still free? The free trolleys.
Well, they've got to be the free trolleys because they're the ones that we're taking for granted. No one's going to destroy, the ones you have to put the money in. This all comes from a time when it was because we grew up in a pretty rough area in the western suburbs. We had to learn to fight before we were walking kind
That's
of
right,
thing.
the mean streets of Sydenham and Hillside.
Exactly right. Old school. And kids, like gangs, were using these trolleys. They were like jumping on the trolleys to get the handles off them and then stashing the handles in various places in case they ended up into a gang fight. They could go and get the handles back. That's what inspired this whole thing. I'm like, man, trolleys are so helpful and we just diss them. Movie idea.
I was actually joking about the mean streets. That's the first I've ever heard of kids busting the handles to use them as weapons.
I'm not lying. They were mean streets, man.
Okay, well, now I take your word for it.
Why do you think I'm so buff?
Buff or fat?
I'm in the buff.
Oh,
I'm in
okay,
the buff.
Cool. All right, well, let's kick into the movie news now. And I have to start. I was really, really disappointed when I heard this, and quite shocked, to be honest.
Viagra doesn't work.
Ben Affleck has stepped down as director of the Batman film.
Yes, was disappointing.
This whole month, it's been kind of because he's been on the promotion tour for his new film, Live by the Night, which we'll get to in a moment. And everyone's asking, how's the Batman film going? How's the script going? And he keeps saying, like, if the script isn't any good, I'm not going to make it. That type of he was just putting that into the world, and he said, I'm doing it, I'm not doing it. If the script's not ready, we're not going into production. So, and now all of a sudden he's stepped down, and reports today that the writer of Batman v Superman and Argo, Chris Torrio, has done the latest draft of the Batman film. So,
did he write Batman v Superman as well?
Yes. He did.
Oh my god! When I
Yes.
saw Argo, and I'm like, oh okay.
No, he wrote Batman v
Realize
Superman.
it's the same guy.
Yes, and now all the pieces are starting to fall into place with what Ben Affleck was saying on his promotion tour. Maybe this movie isn't that good. Maybe the script isn't that good, and that's why he's stepping down. The amount of
Gotta
shit,
be good.
the amount of shit that DC and Ben Affleck copped after Batman v Superman, you're kind of thinking, is he kind of jumping off the sinking ship? And then there was an article yesterday written by some guy at the Forbes magazine saying that after Justice League, he might step aside completely because he doesn't want. He just had this massive reputation built of him being this fantastic actor and director. Then all of a sudden, the DCU movies are starting to bring him down another level. And after his latest film, Live by the Night, just bombed, he doesn't necessarily want to keep bombing 3 in a row. So
The gravity well that was the DCU has managed to drag the shining light of Ben Affleck down, and everyone was hoping that Ben was going to be there and lift it up, but it was just too much for him. I'm really worried because he was on Wonder Woman. We talked about the possible dangers with that production before, but I'm really excited about that. But Batman was one I was really psyched for. And now this is just real kick in the teeth.
yeah, well, he'd been on this massive hot streak. He'd been he'd done like The Town. He did Argo. He'd done Gone Girl.
Gone Girl, yeah.
Like, it was almost untouchable, and Warner Brothers absolutely loved him. And now all of a sudden, Batman v Superman, stinker. Live by the Night, stinker. Justice League, who knows? And now the Batman, is he trying to jump off this sinking ship before his career goes back to where it was originally? I don't know.
Yeah, well, look, I think he's got the inside knowledge. So if he's edging away, if he had seen that it was a good product, he would be all about it. He'd be shouting off the rooftops. But the fact that he's not, I think, indicates that it's not happening. In a perfect world, there'd be no DC EU or whatever they call it for the cinematic universe. It would just be Ben Affleck, making the Batman movie that he wants to make without any of the baggage, and it would be friggin' awesome.
I think that's the problem.
I've no doubt about that.
I think that's where they're running into trouble, is that everything has to link back into this universe. You can't make an individual film that isn't, the sequel to this, or it hasn't got a follow-on effect from the previous film. So, maybe that's the roadblock there. Who knows? But it didn't take long for a short list of possible directors to come out the very next day, actually. And this was, again, out of that Forbes magazine. Basically, the short list was Matt Reeves. He's the director of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which so far what he's done with that film is fantastic. And the new one looks just as good, if not better. Gavin O'Connor, he was the director of The Accountant, who also directed Ben Affleck. Matt Ross, who's made a film called Captain Fantastic. And
with Vigo.
Yes. And two directors, which I frothed when I heard it could be a possibility, is that Denis Villeneuve, who directed Arrival and Sicario, and Australia's very own Mad Max director, George Miller.
I would be really interested to see George Miller have his hand at a film like this.
Yeah. Look, I reckon all the names that we announced are pretty damn good, but to see George Miller have a crack, especially when he was so far into production of a Justice League film, say 10, 15 years ago, he had the cast, he had the script, everything was good to go, and then it fell apart. So to see him have a go at doing this, and George Miller is really underrated, in my opinion.
He's understated, funnily enough, given the films that he makes.
And especially now that Warner Brothers are back in love with him after Mad Max, and there doesn't seem to be a Mad Max sequel on the horizon. Maybe the timing is right for George Miller to step into those shoes.
Who is going to be his? Who is his cast? Did he have a cast?
Yeah, everyone was cast. Australia's Megan Gale was Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman, yes.
Armie Hammer was Batman. But he did have the whole Justice League cast, but the other ones weren't as big a names as what probably those two were.
Okay, that's good. That's what you want.
Yeah, so it was going to be shot here in Australia, but eventually it all fell apart, which is a shame. So, again, we've had the director of The Flash drop out, two directors from The Flash drop out now. We've had the director of Ben Affleck has stepped aside from Batman. Things are on pretty shaky ground over at the DCEU.
I saw a fantastic comment when this news came out. Top comment on the Reddit thread was, "Give the rights back to Marvel." Like, yes. That would make a great play by them. Look, they couldn't go wrong if they did it. And how awesome would it be to see Batman in the next Avengers film?
Surely there must be like a second in charge to Kevin Feige that DC can go and poach. Surely that there has to be someone over there that they can go and steer the ship.
Well, they had their Feige. They had him. And what's he doing?
Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But I will soon find out in June when Wonder Woman comes out whether the ship is steering in the right direction. And as you said on previous podcasts, the trailer has everything going for it. It's got the whole story is there. They just need to turn it into a 90 to 120-minute film.
Look, I'm going to keep the hope up. Wonder Woman, I'm really looking forward to it, yes, but that will be the turning point. Either it's going to go, Wonder Woman's going to drag them kicking and screaming into the sun, or they're too deep in that hole.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been a good week for Ben Affleck, to be honest. The numbers are coming out for his latest film, which he starred, directed, and wrote, Live by the Night. And it's looking like a $75 million flop for Warner Brothers.
That's tough.
Yeah, he's had a really shit week, to say the least. Warner Brothers are saying that we're still in the Ben Affleck business, but what he does from here, who knows?
Yeah, and it's a real shame because Live by Night looks like a really interesting film.
Yeah.
But I didn't see any advertising for it.
Well, there's probably a good reason for that. I did see that this week, and I'll give you my thoughts on that film later in the podcast.
You don't sound very happy with it. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, it was a film I was looking forward to, and yes, I'll leave that. All right,
so go on.
Another classic film. I think it came out in the 80s, I'm pretty sure, and I know you're quite excited about this one, so maybe I'll let you speak to it. And that's the Dune reboot.
Yes. And I was going to say, I don't think that Denis Villeneuve will be directing any Batman films because he's going to be cooped up making a Dune film, which is amazing. Now, the original film came out in '84, the year I was born, so a good year for things to be created. And it's pretty. Have you seen it?
I honestly have not seen it. I haven't had any interest at all in this film.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
It's just think Game of Thrones, but in space.
Okay.
It's kind of political intrigue, people getting kicked off thrones and then forming resistances, but it all takes place around. No, not as much dirty incest. Not just a little, not nearly as much.
I'm not interested then.
I was watching. I saw the honest trailer for Empire Strikes Back, and they were showing the kisses between Leia and Luke, and I'm like, they really do more than once have a good pash.
Yeah, absolutely. The theme of incest does carry in that film, especially the first two.
Oh gosh. Anyway, but it's all based around this planet Arrakis, which is like a desert world where this ultimate resource called spice melange is, and it's the only place where in the universe you can get it, and it basically makes all of society possible in this world. So it's about the political struggles and the military struggles over that resource. And it's really cool. And I'd love to see a modern reboot with modern effects, modern actors, modern sensibilities. The really exciting thing about this as well is that the writer, Frank Herbert, has come out and said that the actual thing, it could be a film. He said on Twitter, it could be a film. It also could be a television series. It could be both. It's not locked in yet which one it's going to be, which is pretty. Sorry, it was Brian Herbert who said that. That's pretty exciting because it would be pretty amazing if they did both a lead-in series and then a movie that they'd planned ahead of time or something like that. So I don't know, because it's a massive story. Telling it in one film will be difficult. I'd expect at least a sequel or a trilogy.
Well, you would think that with the success of Game of Thrones and Westworld, that people are willing to commit and invest in this type of story that is quite large. So rather than cram it into, say, maybe 6 hours over 3 films, why not do it a 10-episode arc and leave it open for a second season and so on.
That's the way to do it. With all the money in television these days, you could pull off giant sandworms and great ships and the interstellar travel. It would just gets me excited thinking about.
Well, I will watch anything that this guy directs. So his last 3 films with Prisoners, Sicario, and Arrival. I reckon he's on the best hot streak going around at the moment, and he's got Blade Runner coming up this year.
Yes.
So it would be interesting if he does a sequel to Blade Runner and then a reboot of a current franchise or an old franchise. It'll be interesting if he does go off and then make an individual film, a standalone film.
All we know is that unlike Ben Affleck, he'll probably be working for many years to come.
Yeah. All right, well, the next piece of news is that James Cameron has finally finished writing 4, can you believe it, 4 Avatar sequels. Like, he spent the last, I think, nearly 3 or 4 years writing these films. I'm like, why wouldn't you just wait? Like, Avatar was big because it was something people hadn't seen before. So that's why it was so massive. And he introduced 3D back into the cinema, and it's pretty much fizzled out now. So he changed the game, and I think that was one of the reasons why the film was the success that it was. It wasn't necessarily the film itself, if that makes sense. Like, that story had been told many, many times before, and for him to make 4 movies in a row, it's a massive investment by the studio. What if the first one fails? The second film fails, and then he's got 2 more lined up ready to come out.
He must have a plan. I mean, it's very odd to have what will be 5 films in a series. So obviously there's a story that he wants to tell. Is that going to take place over a great amount of time? I don't know. I'm keen. I love the first film. I know it copped a lot of flack for being simplistic and a retelling of an old story, but I saw it 5 times at the cinema. And
5 times.
Yeah, 5 times.
Jesus. So
I remember
I've only
I
seen it
remember
once.
walking out of the cinema the first time and sitting in my car and just thinking, "Oh my God, I'll remember this moment for years." I loved that movie when it came out. Funnily enough, I haven't watched it since, so you're probably right about the fact that because it was, such a big spectacle at the time. But my interesting thing about the news from this is that the villain is going to come back.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
apparently Stephen Lang is going to come and reprise his role
That's interesting.
because he was so well loved, and I loved him. I thought he was a
Yeah,
fantastic
so did
villain.
I. He was brilliant.
But apparently, yeah, he's going to come back. So I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, they could do it any number of ways, but that could be interesting. And also, apparently, this is the same universe as the Alien and Predator universe. So I wonder if there'll ever be some kind of crossover there. Could be pretty cool.
Interesting.
Imagine a Predator on Pandora, or an Alien Queen.
Yeah, that's cool. Look, well, to be honest, James Cameron has never put a foot wrong. I don't think he's actually made a bad film. So if he's got 4 Avatar sequels lined up, well, fuck, I can't knock him for
Take
anything.
my
So
money.
yeah,
Take my money.
It's not like we're not going to watch them. All right. Well, this week as well, while he announced that his writing and production starts. Oh yeah, production of these films start in August. So I think they're shooting them all at once as well. So that'll be quite interesting to say the least. He actually came out and he finally put a myth that has been bugging people for 20 years. The ending of Titanic. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. That Kate Winslet is sitting on or lying on a piece of shipwreck while Jack Leonardo DiCaprio, freezes his ass off in the water. So he basically gave the explanation is that was Rose was just a bitch and didn't want to share. No, but the real reason why he gets off the board and he gives his place to her to make sure she can survive. That was
I've
the
got to be
reason.
honest. I did not think that this was a thing. Like,
This has always been a thing.
but I thought it was pretty clear. I mean, if
Yeah,
there was
but
room on the board, he'd be on the board.
it was pretty clear that there was plenty of room on the board. She just had to move over a little bit.
Rose don't share, okay? She's first class.
So
First class on the
basically,
ship, first
he
class on the debris.
he wanted to make sure that she survived, so he got off.
Yeah, he got off all right. I've seen the film. That car scene, oh
That's
boy.
the steamy car scene.
Yeah. What a meme for so long, that hand on the window bit. Gosh, that film really changed cinema.
Yeah, it did. It was yeah, as I said, everything that he's done from Aliens to Terminator. Terminator 2 changed the game completely. Avatar changed the game. Titanic changed the game. Even a film like True Lies, that was a fantastic film and
Yeah.
and an even better action film. And that kind of, stemmed the flow of what action films kind of became after that. So as I said, he's done everything right. So for me to knock him, shame on me. So in Cameron we trust.
Maybe Jimmy C is the one I need to be pitching my trolley movie to. Maybe he's got the right vision.
He has the power. Don't worry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first image from the Ocean's 8 film got released this week. And I got to admit, the cast looks pretty damn good
It's
together.
insane.
As much as, it was a pretty deep picture and the characters are quite scattered around, it did look kind of cool. So I'm kind of looking forward to this one now.
Yeah, I mean, I would see any buddy film with Sandra Bullock and Kate Blanchett, and I'm there opening day. And to have all that other cast as well, I'm pretty wrapped. I'm looking forward to this movie. I want it to be really good.
Yeah, another one I'm looking forward to as well, and the final trailer dropped this week was Beauty and the Beast. Didn't really give much away that we hadn't seen already, but someone put up like a from the animated film to the feature film comparison, and it's pretty frame for frame. It does look really impressive.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest here. When this was first announced, I was really excited, but the more I see of it, the more I worry.
Why?
Yeah, some of the effects look a little bit jarring to me, and I'm also of the mind that the original was so good. If you're going to make it exactly the same, why bother?
Yeah, but don't forget that film was, I don't know how old it is now. So you've got an entirely new generation where this will be their Beauty and the Beast. They won't necessarily have such the heartfelt connection that we have with the original film.
Oh yeah, and I can totally dig that. I can totally redoing Beauty and the Beast, but do it at least a little bit differently. Change up. I'm not saying like set it in New York in modern day or anything like that, but to be frame for frame basically the same thing, which is an artistic feat, and don't take anything away from that. But I thought they could have mixed something up. There were a couple of moments in this latest trailer which weren't in the original, which was good, but some of them it's just like, well, might as well just put the animated scene in there. I mean, I've got the DVD. I could just show the kids these days the original, and that could become their Beauty and the Beast. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I get what you're saying, but this film is going to make a shit ton of money. They could not care less if the script and the frame by frame was exactly the same.
They could just release the animated one again.
This film is going to make more than $1 billion, so they could not care less what Look, we think.
I will be going to see it, but I'll wear my disappointed face going in, and hopefully I'll walk out with my happy face.
But I do agree, especially the Beast. I still don't think the Beast doesn't look good. I saw the trailer on the big screen when I went and saw Moana, and it still doesn't look as photorealistic as what the Jungle Book was, for example.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. I think all the CG overall is a little bit down on the Jungle Book. Like even all of the utensils and Lumiere and Mrs. Potts and stuff. The scene where she's when Belle is holding the chip, the cup, it looks like CG. Yeah. So hopefully it's cleaned up before the release. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it will be. Well, I don't know if you were ever a fan of the Jackass films, but I recently watched one, or some of it, as early as last night, actually. And the good news that came out today was Johnny Knoxville, who is the main man in the Jackass series, is making another film where he is creating a theme park, which is inspired by the Jackass films. And I'm all in. Anything this guy does is absolutely hilarious. What this guy puts himself through is ridiculous. I don't know if you ever saw Bad Grandpa.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, everything that was funny of the film we saw in the trailer, so it didn't really leave much. But what this guy can do, even now, I will watch anything that he does.
It's just crazy. I mean, this guy basically came out of nowhere with him and his crew.
Yeah.
And just created a phenomenon.
Yeah, it was.
Remember when YouTube was like first really getting up, and every second video was of some idiot jumping off the roof to be the next Jackass?
Yeah.
This guy, I mean, his effect on popular culture is not to be downplayed. So look, I'll see this movie. I think it could be a lot of fun. Don't think Johnny Knoxville takes himself very seriously, which sells the character.
Yeah, absolutely. The guy can just play himself, and it's a winner.
I don't think you can drink champagne from your own gooch and take yourself seriously.
See, that's why you could put him in anything.
I'm not sure you could put him in anything.
Anything.
He's probably not going to be the good in the reboot of Schindler's List. Okay. I don't think that's going to work out.
All right, well, you pretty much debunked that.
What's that Nazi officer? Is he drinking champagne from his gooch? Oh, gosh.
Yeah, maybe
just ruined the war.
You just ruined my train of thought. All right, next topic. As we've spoken about previously, Mel Gibson was banished into the wastelands of Hollywood, and last year we saw the resurgence with Bloodfather and Hacksaw Ridge. Now his next film is going to be it's kind of an odd matchup, really. Him and Vince Vaughn playing an older and just nearly as old police officers who get caught up in this video of them heavy-handedly assaulting a civilian, and then they go into the underworld to try and cash in on their fame and past dues. The film itself doesn't really sound that exciting, but I love Mel Gibson.
Weird.
It does sound very weird, and if I was going to, if you want Mel Gibson to be the older cop and then you have a younger partner, Vince Vaughn ain't exactly young. He'd be pushing 50 himself. So,
is it a comedy?
No, it's not a comedy. It's a drama.
It's weird. So they get caught assaulting somebody.
Yeah.
and then they go underground. Oh, so are they undercover officers who everybody thinks has been kicked off the force, but really they're still on the force?
No, they find themselves suspended when a video of them strong arming a civilian becomes a media circus, and they're low on cash with no other options. So they go into the criminal underworld to gain and cash in on their past dues.
That's strange.
It's called Dragged Across Concrete.
Yeah, which is also a weird title. I'm looking at an image of them now, and Vince Vaughn is a good head taller than Mel Gibson as well.
Yeah, yeah.
This is a weird pairing. I'm interested. Yeah, I'm interested to see it, but man, this it's going to be different at very least.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Mel's been putting in great effort this year.
Yeah, hope he doesn't go backwards.
Yeah.
Are you a Nic Cage fan?
I'm not one of those crazy Nic Cage, one true god kind of fans, but I think he's cool. I think he doesn't take himself very seriously, which I appreciate.
He does. He must be really. He's either really eccentric and just loves to work, or he's so far in debt that he'll just fucking star in any film possible. Because he just seems to be in every B-grade film that happens to be made as of late.
You know what? I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I don't think he has a lot of taste, but I also think he likes money.
Yeah, or possibly.
Yeah.
Because he just pumps out these films. Well, anyway, in the States, they have a Nicolas Cage film festival called Caged.
Why would it?
And this week he happened to crash this film festival, and everyone was in a wild applause, and actually sat there and watched a few of his films and did a Q&A afterwards. And the films that they showed was like Bangkok Dangerous, Bringing Out the Dead, Army of One, Lord of War. I haven't even fucking heard of half of these ones.
Lord of War is apparently really good.
Actually, I have seen that one. I haven't seen the other ones. I know the Bringing Out the Dead. I think that was the Scorsese one, but it wasn't one of his better ones. But I think these people just love, some people call him a genius. Some people call him eccentric, spectacular. And then others just think he's a madman, basically. So, I don't think I could sit through 7 of his films back to back.
No. No. Whenever I think of Nic Cage, I always just remember the images of him as Superman. Yeah. And I think that broke him when he was so close to playing the character that he loved so much and didn't get a chance. So I think that broke him a little bit. And then when he made Ghost Rider and that was what it was, I think he's fallen off the precipice, and there's just no returning for that man. Godspeed, Nic Cage. I'm really glad you went to your own festival. I think that shows that he's a good guy, and I hope he continues to make weirdly eccentric films.
Yeah, I think it's pretty damn cool that he would go and support the fans who supported him all this time.
Yeah,
and who go out and actually watch these B-grade turds that he pumps out so regularly.
I like how you're like, yeah, nice guy. You're shit, but you're a really nice guy.
Oh, not his shit. His films are shit.
Okay.
There's
just your work, Nick, not you.
There's a difference here.
Yeah, just whatever you touch turns to shit.
All right, well, I want to speak about some of the films that I've watched of late.
Yes.
One of them being Live by Night. Now, I was really excited because, as I said, Ben Affleck had been on this fantastic hot streak. His last films that he directed were so good that anything that he came out with, I was excited to see. I love films based on that era. I love the Prohibition scene, and to put Ben Affleck with gangsters and everything else, I was really excited. But after the 2 and a bit hours that I sat there and watched it, I was just like, what the fuck? I don't think anyone, I think because of the hot streak that he was on, I don't think anyone questioned or said no to anything that he did. But this movie was just, it just didn't deliver anything. It was just so bland and so kind of dull that, it just left you with a, what the fuck? And there's a reason why it's lost $75 million at the box office, because it's not very good at all.
Okay, so what's the premise? I mean, I know it's Prohibition era. He plays kind of a gangstery type.
Yeah, so basically he starts off as a low-level thug / goon / bank robber, and he works his way up to being, the top of the food chain. There's themes of, everything that you do in life will eventually catch up with you and everything else. And it just, as I said, it was just, it was just bland. It was just boring. It was just uninspired, to be honest. And the look of it itself, it just didn't look nice. The cinematography wasn't good at all. And it's a big thumbs down from me, to be honest. And I love Affleck, and I was really excited to see this film, but it just was not any good.
Okay.
To say
So
the
it's a
least.
miss.
It is a massive miss.
All right.
I watched a fantastic film called Hidden Figures. It was about back in the early space race in the 60s. Three African American women were part of the NASA team, and they were really pioneers in their field that kind of helped launch man into the space race and into space. And it's just fantastic and really still quite disturbing to see the amount of racism and what people of color had to go through back then. And I'm sure it happened here in Australia as well, where they were segregated to certain sections of a bus. They couldn't drink out of a white person's fountain. They had separate toilets. It was just really it's so ridiculous to see now that this is how the world was, and it's really quite sad to see what these people live through. But the film is very good. The three leads are fantastic, and it does leave you feeling quite good about what these women were able to achieve in their field, considering all the struggles and everything that was pushed up against them. They still rose above it to, let them be themselves. They be pioneers in the field that they chose, and it had a really good message. And especially with everything that's happening now with women and Trump and everything else, it was actually good to see that this film is a standout from everything that 50 years later they're still having dramas with and problems with now. So it is quite an eye-opener.
Films like this, I think, is when a cinema can be at its most powerful. I mean, their contribution could have been lost to time, but people like movies. They go and see movies, so that they'll see this movie and they'll realize a story that they probably never would have otherwise. So, I'm really keen to see this one. I'm glad it was good.
Yeah, it was very good. I saw a comedy, coming-of-age comedy called Edge of 17. It's a film about basically a 16-year-old girl and the trials and tribulations of what teenagers go through, and
so very relatable for you.
Very relatable.
It's a teenage girl.
Yeah, I related with all her mood swings and everything else. It was fantastic. But it was a very funny film, and if you do get a chance to see it, make sure you get along to see that one. Another one I saw was a film called Moonlight, a film that gets rave reviews everywhere. This is much like all the other films that everyone raves about, like La La Land and Manchester by the Sea. They were good, but I didn't think it was that great. I don't think it was anything special. It was a great story, but it was basically told a story of a boy through different phases of his life as a young child, a teenager, then into adulthood. He's dealing with his sexuality, he's dealing with the area and his upbringing, and where he eventually starts off and where he ends up. It's quite sad to see. But the film itself, I wouldn't say it's a contender at this year's Oscars, to say the least.
So it's interesting but uninspired.
Correct. I didn't feel that great after watching it. But one film that I did like this week, and it was the return of form for M. Night Shyamalan, and that is Split. This film is a fantastic return to grace for M. Night Shyamalan. It's got James McAvoy, who plays a man with split personalities. I think he plays 7 on screen, but his character itself has 23 personalities. And it's so hard because I want to talk about this film, but I can't talk about this film because there's this fantastic turn in the last 5 seconds of the film that kind of opens up a universe that you never expected to be opened. And again, I won't spoil anything, but if you're a fan of his early work, I don't think you'd be disappointed with this film.
I'm definitely going to get to see this one.
Yeah, and it's making monster money. I think it was made for like $9 million, and I think it's returned over $50 million so far. So
the return of M.
It is the return of M, and as I said, I loved M. Night Shyamalan, and then he just went so far off the rails it was not funny. But it looks like that he could have got back on track with this one.
We might finally get that Unbreakable sequel.
Well, again, no spoilers.
Okay. All right. I'm keen.
Yeah, it's very cool. All right.
All
Well,
right.
without talking any more about that, I think it's time to wrap up Not Another Movie podcast. I hope you've enjoyed episode 1, the inaugural episode of our new series. And I hope you will return next week for episode 2. I am Sean Pierce.
And I am Sean Kelly.
And let your week be a good week until next week.